Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Clues by Sam. I hope you are doing good. I didn't post a video yesterday and I want to talk about it. I did do a community post about it, but if you haven't seen it, I just want to let you know that my life, as I've been saying on a few of the videos lately, my life is crazy lately. And one of the reasons that I'm sort of a little bit down is because my dog had a medical procedure and he had to go under. And when he came back, he wasn't quite himself. He's very old, so he had a few side effects from the whole procedure, but he is starting to get better. We are fixing things, and he's almost back to normal. But I've been dealing with a lot of sleepless nights and a whole other things that we have in our normal schedules. So it's been a lot, but I'm going to try to catch up today and I'm going to play 3 puzzles. Why? First of all, I want to play yesterday's puzzle and I want to talk about some things. Second of all, I'm going to play today's puzzle. And third, I'm going to play the evil one from the bonus puzzles because we missed Double Monday, but I want to play the evil one. So, first of all, yesterday's puzzle. We have yesterday's puzzle right here, and it was an easy one. And I wanted to tell you that, as I usually do say, easy ones are good puzzles to start off if you've never played Clues by Sam before. And if you're watching this today and we do not have an easy one today, or maybe you're doing this on Sunday and you want to start with the easy one for your first time, you can, because you can go to the page of the current puzzle and right below the puzzle, below all of the tips and buttons, there are links to all of the puzzles of the week. So starting on Monday, we can click the first link here and go to the puzzle for Monday. And you can do this any day of the week. If you don't have access to the archive, you can access at least the ones from the week through here. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is we are going to play the evil one from the newsletter. And to subscribe to the newsletter, if you are on the daily puzzle, let's go to the daily puzzle here. So we click Tuesday, which is today, and we don't have an easy one. And we go a little down. See, here are the links for the week's ones. But if we go a little lower, there's a subscribe option right here where there is a text box where you type your email address and you start getting bonus puzzles and a few more insights from Sam from last week's puzzles and what Sam has been doing on the behind the scenes. All of that on your email every Monday. So that's why we are gonna play the evil one from the bonus ones today. So let's start with the easy one. So this is gonna be a good demonstration of an easy, a medium, and an evil one. I guess it would be better if we had a hard one to play as the highest difficulty, but evil is even better because it's more fun to see me struggle. Let's start with yesterday's one. Kita says that Raul is one of 2 instants to the right of Nicole, so Raul is an instant. Kita is also to the right of Nicole, so now we have 2, which makes the third person not an innocent. Now Raul says that each row has at least 2 criminal, and Raul himself is in row 4, which needs a second criminal, and there's only 1 person left, that's Nicole. Now Nicole says that exactly 1 instant above Wanda is neighboring Scott, and that innocent is Raul, so that makes Laura a criminal because Laura is also neighboring Scott above Wanda. Now Laura says that column B is the only column with exactly 4 criminals. So we need 4 criminals in column B, and there's 4 people left. All of them have to be criminals because so far there are no criminals in that column. Now, Gary says there is only 1 instant above Zara. Okay, so there's gonna be 1 instant here. We don't know who yet. But we know that if there's 1 instant above Zara and there's another 3 people, one of which is an instant only, then that makes that column have 3 criminals already, right? And we know that column B is the only one with 4 criminals. So we need Zara, the last person in column D, to not be a criminal, otherwise column D would also have 4 criminals. Zara now says that Scott has exactly 3 criminal neighbors. So Scott needs 2 more criminal neighbors and he has 2 neighbors left. So both of them have to be criminals. Wanda now says there are exactly 2 criminals in row 5. So row 5 is does already have its 2 criminals, which makes Uma an innocent because it's also in that row. Uma now says that an odd number of innocents on the edges neighbor Hope. So first of all, we know there has to be an innocent above Hope here in column D. So one of them has to be an innocent, the other one will be a criminal. So we tag them with the same color to indicate they are opposites. Now, if Hope has an odd number of people neighboring her, and there's of people who are innocents neighboring her, and there's already an innocent here, and she has only one more person left on the edge. That's Carl. Carl can be an innocent because that will make Hope have 2 innocents on the edges. And 2 is an even number, so we need Carl to be a criminal. Now Carl says that each row has at least 1 innocent. So what row doesn't have an innocent? Row 3, and there's only 1 person left, so that person has to be the innocent. Now, Joy says that Katie has exactly 4 innocent neighbors. Where's Katie? Katie is here, and she has 3 innocent neighbors so far, so that puts Eric and Hope as opposites, because one of them has to be the 4th and last innocent neighbor for Katie. And we also know that column C couldn't be left with 4 criminals, right? Because column B is the only one with 4. So Hope couldn't be a criminal because that will make column C have 4. So Eric ends up being the criminal in Katie's last neighbors. Eric says there are more innocents in column A than column C, and column C has 2, which means that column A needs a 3rd one, who could only be Alice. Alice now says there's an equal number of criminals in rows 2 and 4. So row 4 has 2 criminals, which makes row 2 have 2, and it already does, which makes Isaac an innocent, and Isaac being an innocent makes Dennis a criminal. Good. 3:30. I like the time. So that was the easy one. I didn't really fully explain the mechanics, but I did some of them and how I usually use tags. But we are gonna jump into today's one to look at the logic for today. Now, we start with Donald telling us that only one of 3 criminals in column C is Hal's neighbor. So where's Hal? Hal is in column C as well. And one of the neighbors that he has in column C has to be a criminal. But one of them is already an innocent, that's Donald. So he only has 1 more neighbor left in column C. And that person has to be a criminal. And there has to be 3 criminals in column C, so 2 more. But we don't know who's the second innocent yet. Mark says that exactly 1 innocent in column C is a guard. So there's only 1 guard in column C, and that person has to be the innocent. So now we do know who is the second innocent in column C. Now we know that both Tina and Sia are innocents, criminals. What happens in our brains when we do that? It's so interesting. Hall now says that Uma is one of 2 criminals in between Emma and Zara. So Uma is a criminal. And there has to be a second one between Emma and Zara here in column D. And there's 2 people left. Either Isaac or Nancy have to be the second criminal. So we tag them as opposites again. Tina now says there are exactly 2 innocents in row 5. Okay, we don't know who those 2 are yet. Sia says that both innocents above Zara are connected. So there has to be 2 innocents above Zara. And we know there's 1 innocent here. Right? The second innocent can only be Emma. It's the only person left. So she has to be an innocent. And since the other innocent has to be connected to her, that makes Isaac that innocent, which makes Nancy a criminal because they were opposites. Now, Nancy says there are exactly 2 innocents to the left of Zara. Okay, so 2 innocents are Vera and Wanda. And we also know that since there's 2 innocents in row 5, we already found them. That makes Zara a criminal. So we don't need Tina's clue anymore. We don't need Nancy's clue anymore. Uma says that each column has at least 2 criminals. Okay, we can't use that yet, but Zara says that Petra is one of 6 criminals on the edges. So Petra is a criminal. And there has to be 6 total on the edges. So far we have 1, 2, 3, 4 with these 4 here, and 5 with Petra. So the second one is for sure gonna be the second. The sixth one is for sure gonna be here in column A because everybody in column A is on the edge, and there has to be at least 2 criminals in each column. So column A is gonna have a second criminal, putting the last one on the edge. Let's say that's Bruce. So we know that any criminals in column B couldn't be on the edge because that would go beyond 6. So Chris, who is the other person on the edge in column B, couldn't be a criminal, but we still don't know who's the criminal in column A. Now, Chris says that exactly 1 criminal in column B is neighboring Hal. So Hal has 2 people in column B who could be criminals neighboring him, Gary and Larry. Only one of them is a criminal. And since column B needs to have a second criminal, that has to be Kita, because she's not neighboring Hal. Kita now says that only 1 instant in column A has an instant directly below them. So, how does that work? Could we have both Bruce and Franco be instants and Keith be a criminal? That would leave us with 1 instant in column A with an instant below them, right? If it were Keith and Franco, same thing happens. We have 1 instant with an instant below them. What couldn't be is Bruce and Keith being instants and Franco being a criminal, because now we have no instants in column A with instants below them. So sometimes when the clue says there's only 1 person, the only tends to make you think about how there could be more than 1, and you try to avoid that scenario. At least that's what happened with me. But what we have to think about is how there has to be at least 1. When you say only 1, there has to be 1. So 0 is not a possibility. So we can't have Franco be a criminal because that will break. Now Franco says that only 1 instant in column B has an instant above them. Okay, there's 1 instant in column B who has a criminal above them, and there's 1 instant in column B who has nobody above them. Now, if Larry were to be an instant, we know that will force Gary to be a criminal, and now we have the same scenario as we had in column A. So the only 1 means there has to be 1. There couldn't be none. So we know that Gary has to be an instant, so that we have 1 instant in column B with an instant above them. Larry now says that exactly 4 instants in row 1 have an instant directly below them. So we have to have a 4th instant in row 1, and that has to be Bruce. And we know that the second criminal in column A is Keith. And we are done with the puzzle. So that was really nice. A really nice new mechanic to exercise and to pay attention to. And combined with the edges, which is a little bit almost tricky to figure out if you're not paying attention to column B there. So I like it a lot. Very nice. And if you want to see me play the evil one, let's jump into it right now. So this is the evil one from May 18th, which was yesterday. And I'm curious to know how evil this is. So let's restart to get the timer right. And start with Chuck telling us that 2 of the 3 criminals below him are Clay's neighbors. So Clay has 2 people below Chuck who neighbor him, and both of them have to be criminals. There's a 3rd criminal below Chuck who has to be either Rose or Vince. Now, don't need Chuck's clue anymore, so we dismiss it. Jose says there are no instants in between Vince and him. So Vince is right below him. And between them, there's Nicole, but there's also Rose, who couldn't be an instant. Rose and Vince were opposites, so the other one turns into an instant. We don't need Jose's clue anymore. Nicole says that exactly 1 criminal in row 5 is a criminal above them. We know there has to be a criminal in row 5, so you see, similar to the only 1 thing, this one says exactly 1 criminal in row 5. So we know for sure there has to be 1 criminal in row 5. So let's keep that in mind when it comes up later. Rose says that exactly 1 instant in the corners has an instant directly to the right of them. So 1 instant in the corners has an instant directly to the right of them. There's 4 people in the corners: Adam, Donald, Tina, and Sola. One of them has to have an instant to their right, but 2 of them don't have anybody to their rights. Donald and Zola both have nobody to their rights. So either Tina or Adam are gonna have an innocent to their rights. Which means that the other person to the right of, oh, but we gotta pay attention to something else here, because it says that one innocent in a corner has an innocent to the right. I was gonna say that Bonnie and Uma were opposites, but we gotta pay attention to the fact that Rose says that innocent in a corner. It could be that Tina is a criminal and has an innocent to her right. That would work, even if Adam and Bonnie both are innocent. So Uma and Bonnie could both be innocents if Tina is a criminal, for example, because now we have one innocent in a corner with an innocent to their right, and the other person is not an innocent. Did you get it? Hope I could explain it. Okay, now Vance says there are exactly 3 innocents in the corners. Okay, so we know there's 3 innocents in a corner. So how do we approach this? Could we make Adam a criminal? And if we made Adam a criminal, this is important, that would force every other person in a corner to be innocent, right? Because there's 3 innocents in a corner. So any one of them that is a criminal is going to force the other ones to be innocents. Now, that would make it so that the innocent in a corner with an innocent to their right is Tina, because the other 2 who are innocents in corners don't have anybody to their right. So Tina would have to have Uma be an innocent so that we can abide by Rose's clue. But now we are left with no criminals in row 5. And we know that there's one criminal in row 5 because of Nicole's clue. At least one. So that proves that Adam couldn't be a criminal. That's good. Now we know there's one criminal around here, but Adam gives us a new clue. Exactly 2 of the 7 criminals on the edges are Kita's neighbors. So Kita has 2 criminals neighboring her. How do we go from there? 7 criminals on the edges. One thing I want to think about is could those 2 be Tina and Uma? No, they couldn't. Because, well, they could. There's nothing. Because Adam could be the innocent in a corner with an innocent to their right. And then these 2 guys would be innocents. So that could be. And that leaves us with... Oops. These 2 have to be innocent because Kita has 2 criminals only on the edges neighboring her. So that would leave us with how many slots for criminals on the edges? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That doesn't work. Actually, that doesn't work. So what we learned with this is that we can't have both Tina and Uma be criminals. Can both of them be innocents? And if both of them are innocents, that forces Bonnie to be a criminal because Adam is already an innocent in a corner. And we couldn't have 2 innocents in a corner with innocents to their rights. But we would know that in this scenario, we would still need a criminal in row 5, so that will force Zola to be a criminal, and that would force Donald to be an innocent, so we could have 3 innocents on the edges. And Kita would still need 2 criminals neighboring her on the edges. Now, how many slots are left for criminals? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that works for us. Would it work if Uma was a criminal and Tina wasn't? And if that's the scenario, then same thing here. It does work, right? Because it's the same scenario we just tested. Like, these guys would be opposites. It doesn't really matter what they are. And these guys would be opposites. How many criminals could we have on the edge like that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so there's space for everybody. Could Tina be a criminal? And if she were, she would force Bonnie to be an innocent because we need an innocent on the corner with an innocent to there, right? And she would force Sola and Donald to be innocents because we need 3 innocents in the corners. Kita would still need a second criminal neighboring her, which could be anybody. Actually, yeah, it could be anybody. How many slots are left for criminals? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So not enough. Not enough if Tina is a criminal. Because she forces so many people to be innocent if she is innocent. If she's a criminal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So Tina has to be an innocent. So sometimes it's good to exercise every scenario. And now we do know for sure that Bonnie and Uma are opposites because only one of them can be the innocent to the right of the other innocent on the corner. Now, Tina says that 2 criminals in column B have a criminal to the left of them. So there has to be 2 criminals in column A to the left of people in column B. So 2 criminals in column A, let's say those are Eve and Laura, would force 2 criminals in column B to be to their right. So that would force Floyd and Mark to be criminals. Which works perfectly. We know that Donald and Sola are opposites as well, so let's mark them as so. And we know that there's 2 criminals in column A. So that's 2 plus a third one here in column D and a fourth one here in column B. So we have 3 more slots. And those 3 people have to be Clay, Olaf, and Sue to make 7 criminals on the edges. Oh, I hope I didn't miscount this. How could I have done this? Well, I mean, we could have 3 criminals here. I knew as I was clicking it. Bye-bye. As I was clicking it, I knew that I was doing a mistake. But let me just explain what happened. We could have 3 criminals here if one of them doesn't have a criminal to their right. And that happens because the clue is mentioning specifically criminals with criminals to their left. So this, for example, would not count for this clue. And that's why I said we gotta pay attention to if the clue mentions just a general role, so 2 people generally, or a criminal or an innocent. So we are not sure. What does that mean though? It means that what does it mean? What does it mean? It means that we have at least 2 criminals here. Could this be? I mean, it could. 2 criminals in column B have a criminal to their left. Three innocents in the corners. We don't need that anymore because we tag the people. 1 criminal in row 5 is a criminal above them. So the thing is, could both Uma and Sola be criminals? And if that was the case, one of them only would have to be a criminal in row 5 with a criminal above them. So that'll make Kita and Sue opposites. Kita and Sue being opposites. If Sue were an innocent and Kita were a criminal, would force. I'm not sure this is it, but Kita has only 2 criminals on the edges neighboring her, so Phil would be 1 criminal in column A with a criminal to his right, and Eve would have to be the second. I'm trying to see how many criminals we end up with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we don't have enough criminals on the edges. So we couldn't have both Uma and Sola be criminals. Much less if we make Sola and Sue the criminals, right? Because that would make Laura and Eve the criminals with criminals to their rights. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that works with Clay and Olaf. Oh, I'm looking for criminals. So that works. Does it work? So it doesn't work if Uma is the person with a criminal above her. Is that what we figured? So that means that Kita is an innocent? Can we ever try to make Kita and Uma both innocents? That would force Phil and Laura to be criminals, but that would also force Eve to be a criminal because we need 2 criminals with criminals to their right in column A. So Eve and Laura. And now we have 3 criminals here. We would need Sola and Sue to be criminals, so we have 1 criminal with a criminal above them in row 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This works. But Kita being a criminal, does that make a difference? And if she's a criminal, she forces somebody here to be an innocent. I don't know, this is what I have to be looking at, because I feel like it's taking too much work. Like I'm having to involve too many people in my scenario for it to work, so I feel like it's wrong. It's not what I have to be looking at. So 1 criminal in row 5 is a criminal directly above them. Okay, we know at least one of these people has to be a criminal. We know that only one of these people is an innocent, because we have 2 criminals on the edges and 6 people on the edges beyond those 2. So to make 5, we need only one of these people to be an innocent. If it were Sue, I guess this is it. Because if it were Sue to be the innocent, that'll make everybody else a criminal. And now we have no criminal in row 5 with a criminal above them. Because Sue being an innocent forces everybody else here in column D and column A to be criminals, so we can have a total of 7 criminals on the edges. And these 2 criminals here neighboring Kita in column A force Uma to be an innocent because Kita has only 2 criminals neighboring her on the edges. Now there's no possibility for anybody in row 5 to be a criminal with a criminal above them, even if Sola is a criminal. So Sue has to be a criminal. Okay, it was easier than I thought. It took me some time to get there. Sue now says that exactly 1 innocent in column D has a criminal above them. So talking about column D, there has to be 1 innocent in column D. If that innocent were Donald, there is gonna be a second innocent in column D who has Donald above them, so Clay would be the innocent. And that Uma is innocent because of Sola. And that would force everybody else here to be criminal because Clay is our last innocent on the edge. And that works. If the innocent, on the other hand, were Zola, then there's no way that we could have an innocent in column D with a criminal above. Oh, I'm looking for innocents. So 1 innocent in column D has a criminal directly above them, so it could be Zola. If it were Donald, it could work because we could have Olaf be the second innocent and Clay be a criminal. What we couldn't have is Clay be an innocent and Olaf a criminal because now we have no innocents in column D with criminals above them. And we also couldn't have Clay be a criminal. So the thing is, this works. So it doesn't point to Donald. It doesn't point to Donald because this works just as much as this works. Do we know that if these 2 are criminals, that forces Sola to be an innocent? Yes, because if these 2 are criminals, the only way we could have, if Clay and Olaf both are criminals, the only way we could have an innocent in column D with a criminal above them is with Zola being innocent. That would force Uma and Kita both to be criminals, so we could have a criminal in row 5 with a criminal above them. And now, our innocent in column A would have to be Laura. It could be this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, this works. So what am I looking at? What am I looking at? Can I clear these and then look at maybe... We know that clay could never be an innocent. No, because clay could be an innocent if... Yeah, clay could be an innocent if Donald is a criminal, but that would force Sola to be an innocent, and now we have two innocents in column D with criminals above them. So we know that clay is not an innocent because of that. And now either Olaf or Sola are the innocent with a criminal above them. So these two are opposites. What does that tell me? Because it does tell me something. It tells me that if Olaf is an innocent, everybody here is a criminal. Which is fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If it's the opposite, oops. If Olaf is a criminal, then Sola has to be an innocent. And now there has to be... That forces Uma to be a criminal. Because Sola is not the criminal with a criminal above them in row 5 anymore. But now our innocent is here. Laura will be forced to be an innocent. Because if she were a criminal... I'm always thinking about Laura, poor thing. Sorry, Laura. I'm not accusing you yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That works. Works for me. What was the other scenario? I'm so lost. Do we know that Donald is never an innocent? We just showed him as an innocent. If he's an innocent, then all of... Oh, is that it? If he's an innocent, Olaf has to be an innocent. And that works. The thing is, not just because something works, it means it's right. So what is this telling us? Can we ever make Eve an innocent? And if we do, we have to make Laura and Phil both the criminals in column A with criminals to their rights. And that will force Uma to be an innocent. Which would force Sola to be a criminal because we need a criminal with a criminal above them in row 5. That will force Olaf to be innocent and Donald to be innocent. So that works. One, two, three, four, 5, 6. If Eve is an innocent, she puts a second innocent in column D. And then we have too many innocents on the edges. Okay, Eve has to be a criminal then. And she now says that she has exactly 2 innocent neighbors. So one of them is already Adam. She needs a second innocent neighbor. So the things that we were trying out before put so many criminals everywhere. So one of them, let's say that Bonnie is the second and last criminal innocent neighbor for Eve. How would that go? That will force Phil to be an innocent. Which is fine. But that will force Zola to be a criminal. Because Phil being an innocent forces column D to have only one innocent. So actually, Zola would have to be the innocent. And Kita would have to be a criminal. What? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that works. Did I make sense there? Can I make Phil and Laura now both criminals? I mean, yeah. How many criminals do we have on the edges? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that works. But now Eve would have to have a second innocent being here. And Phil... Yeah, Eve would have to have a second innocent being here, so Kita would be a criminal. So are we looking at Kita never being innocent? And how do I prove that? If Kita is an innocent, then the only person who could be a criminal with a criminal above them in row 5 is Zola. So they would have to be a criminal, which would force Zola to be an innocent. And Olaf to be an innocent as well, so we can have one innocent with a criminal above them in column B. Now, that would force both Laura and Phil to be criminals because we already have our last innocent on the edge here, who's Olaf. And that would force Uma to be an innocent. But now the thing is, Uma being an innocent forces Bonnie to be a criminal, and the only 2 people who could be criminals with criminals to their rights in column A are Eve and Laura. And now Eve doesn't have a second innocent neighbor, so Kita doesn't work being an innocent. Evil. Kita says now that 3 people on the edges have an innocent below them. Now the clue is general. There's no roles for the people who are on the edges that have innocents below them, but only 3 of them do. And one of them for sure is gonna be Clay or Sue, right? And we're talking about innocents below them. The other one is gonna be Phil. So we have either Clay or Sue and Phil. We need a third person. That third person. This is hard because it could be Bonnie. And if it were Bonnie, that would force Laura and Phil both to be innocents. Which would force Uma to be... Again, if Floyd is an innocent, that makes Bonnie the last person on the edge with an innocent below them. And that would force Laura and Phil to be criminals. Because if Laura is an innocent, she puts Eve as one more person on the edge with an innocent below them. If Phil is an innocent, he puts Laura as one more person on the edge with an innocent below them, but Phil is already that person. So that forces Uma to be an innocent, which forces Bonnie to be a criminal, and Mark to be an innocent. And Zola will be a criminal. So do we know that Zola is not an innocent? Because if they are, that would force Olaf to be a criminal and Donald to be a criminal, and then either Laura or Phil would have to be an innocent. Now Eve has her second innocent neighbor. So that works. I don't see an issue here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 criminals on the edges. And there's 3 people on the edges with innocent below them. One of them is Eve, the other one is Phil, and the other one is Sue. So it works with Zola being an innocent. Oh, were they the same? Because these guys are opposites now. Uma and Zola. And Olaf and Zola. Can Uma be... Oh, I don't remember how the scenario was, but I think Uma was an innocent. Yeah, because Zola being innocent makes... I don't remember. Zola being innocent makes Uma a criminal, first of all, because we still need one criminal in row 5 with a criminal above them. Zola forces Donald to be a criminal. And Olaf to be a criminal. So now, somebody here will need to be the last innocent below somebody. And it couldn't be Phil, because if it were Phil... No, it could be Phil, because Eve has her second innocent already. It couldn't be Laura, actually. Because that would give Eve too many innocents. So is it Laura? Is Laura never able to be an innocent? Because if she is, she makes both Mark and Floyd criminals. And both Phil and Uma criminals. And forces Zola to be an innocent because Uma is a criminal already. Nah, this is the way it works. No, it doesn't, because Bonnie becomes an innocent because of Uma. And Eve ends up with too many innocent neighbors. So Laura has to be a criminal. This is crazy. This is crazy. So now how does this work? Either Olaf or Phil are innocents. Right? And if it is Phil, Uma is a criminal, which forces Bonnie to be an innocent, and Floyd and Mark to be criminals, which is great. But if it isn't Phil, and Phil is a criminal, then Uma will be an innocent, which forces Bonnie to be a criminal. And these guys should be opposites, which is okay. How many criminals we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what do I use to disambiguate this? Man, going the whole game with tags that I put on at the beginning of the game is crazy. I love it. So Eve has 2 innocent neighbors. Only one person here is an innocent. Could that person be Bonnie again? Could that person be Bonnie? And if that person is Bonnie, that'll make Floyd and Mark both criminals, which would force Phil to be innocent, so we don't have too many criminals in column A with criminals to their rights. So that would force Uma to be a criminal, and that would force Sola to be an innocent, which would force Olaf and Donald to be criminals, and that's the scenario I was just in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But if it wasn't Bonnie, then these guys are opposites, which forces Phil to be a criminal because he has to be the second criminal with a criminal to their right in column A. And Phil being a criminal forces Uma to be an innocent, which is okay because of Bonnie, and forces Sola to be a criminal, which forces Olaf to be an innocent, and Donald as well. And now how many innocents we have? How many criminals we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That works. What is happening? Exactly one innocent in column D is a criminal. No, I'm doing that. 3 people on the edges have an innocent below them. Oh, is that the problem? Is that the problem? Because we have 1. Huh? We don't have enough people on the edges with innocents below them, even if Floyd is an innocent. Now there's Clay, 1, Bill, and Bonnie. Oh, that works. That works. Did it work with Bonnie being an innocent? Oh, I can't believe I'm gonna do this again. I can't believe I'm gonna do this again. Tagging everybody that needs to be tagged. Okay. How many people do we have on the edges with incense below them? We have 1, Bonnie, 2, Laura, 3, Phil, and 2, 4. So no, Bonnie couldn't be an incense. Am I crazy? Did I tag this wrong? Because Bonnie being innocent forces Floyd and Mark to be criminals, which forces Phil to be an innocent, otherwise we would have too many criminals with criminals to their rights in column A. Which forces Uma to be a criminal because Kita needs 2 criminals neighboring her on the edges. Which forces Ola to be an innocent. Which forces Olaf and Donald both to be criminals. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 criminals on the edges, which is allowed, but we have 1. Oh, Bonnie doesn't have an innocent below her. Oh, this is so tricky. Evil to the max. Can we ever make Mark an innocent? And if Mark's an innocent, that makes these 2 guys criminals. Which makes Phil a criminal. So Bonnie. And this doesn't work. This doesn't work. Because now how many people on the edges do we have with innocents below them? We have Clay, Phil, and that's all. So Mark's a criminal. Hard. Mark says that exactly 1 criminal in row 1 has a criminal directly below them. So Bonnie and Donald are also opposites. What does that tell me? One criminal in row 1 has a criminal below them. I don't know if that means they're opposites, because they could both be criminals with Floyd. Yeah, that happens. Because if Bonnie is a criminal, that forces Floyd to be an innocent. And that would force Donald to be a criminal, which would force Zola to be an innocent. And that breaks, because now Bonnie and Uma both are criminals, and we know they are opposites for sure. Nah, because Bonnie having an being a criminal and having an innocent below her doesn't really force Donald to be a criminal. He could be an innocent and have a criminal below him. That doesn't really matter. Right? This works. So could Bonnie ever be an innocent? And if Bonnie is an innocent, what's the clue about? One criminal in row 1 has a criminal below them. So if Bonnie is an innocent, that does force Donald to be a criminal, which forces Zola to be an innocent, and Uma to be a criminal, which works perfectly here. Phil then would be an innocent and Olaf a criminal, which works. Can I ever make Phil a criminal? And if that's the case, that makes Uma an innocent and Bonnie a criminal. And Uma being innocent forces Ola to be a criminal, which forces Donald to be an innocent, and Olaf to be an innocent. And now Floyd would have to be a criminal, which would make Eve which would make Eve have not enough innocence, so Phil couldn't be a criminal. Oh my god, now know that Uma is a criminal because of Kita, which forces Bonnie to be an innocent, which forces Floyd to be a criminal, and Donald has to be... What's the clue about? One criminal in row 1 has a criminal below them, so that forces Donald to be a criminal, which forces Ola to be an innocent and Olaf to be a criminal. That was torturing. Oh my god, 45 minutes. Well, I hope you did enjoy the video. If you watched all the way up here, leave a comment with a yellow square to indicate that you did see my yellow squares. And I'll see you tomorrow for more Clues by Sam. Bye bye.